console hums, a low-frequency pulse against the dust motes dancing in the single bare bulb. The air carries the faint metallic tang of ozone and the ghost of old nicotine. Hand-labeled vinyl stacks lean like forgotten history.
Black Star Pirate Radio.
St. Marie checks in at 70 degrees and sunny. Wind check west-northwest at 8 miles an hour. First transmission. A US diplomat found dead in Myanmar. Police treat it as a possible homicide.
In Yangon, a U.S. government employee, later identified as a diplomat, was reportedly found deceased at a hotel. Myanmar authorities have confirmed a Thai national is in custody in connection with the investigation. The U.S. State Department has offered minimal official details, citing privacy concerns for the family, but this silence creates a significant vacuum. Myanmar police are now under intense international scrutiny regarding their initial handling of the crime scene and the subsequent arrest, raising questions about procedural transparency.
The silence from official channels and the public's demand for transparent facts creates a dense fog, making it difficult to separate toxic residue from architectural signal. How do we ensure provenance when information flows are deliberately restricted?
This incident, particularly with a foreign national in custody, casts a wide net of suspicion. The Thai national's dignity is immediately compromised, as is the diplomatic community's sense of security. It exposes the U.S. State Department to accusations of clandestine operations and, conversely, the Myanmar junta to charges of opacity and potential political maneuvering. The human story of this individual death risks being subsumed by geopolitical narratives, becoming a pawn in a larger game of foreign interference that erodes trust and the provenance of truth itself, affecting regional stability and the perception of justice for Myanmar's citizens.
An immediate path might be to support independent journalists and local human rights observers already in the region, providing them with secure communications and resources to gather information from local sources and witnesses, ensuring their safety. However, for a structural move towards resilient civic architectures, we must demand a multilateral, independent investigation, leveraging established international legal frameworks like those under the UN. This ensures the provenance of every detail is meticulously recorded and verified, upholding the dignity of the deceased, the accused, and all involved parties, rather than allowing competing national interests to obscure facts.
The pattern auditor is on the line, patching in a call letter. You're on the signal.
This just feels like another setup. Who really benefits from a dead diplomat in Myanmar right now? Where's the proof?
Your skepticism is a compass, caller. We integrate that logic, seeking concrete context rather than accepting incomplete frames. We challenge the narrative to find the structural truth. Next on the dial, Afghanistan. 2 lives lost in a rare street demonstration over women's rights.
In Herat, Taliban forces fired directly on crowds of protesters demonstrating against recent arrests of women accused of violating the strict hijab dress code. This brutal crackdown resulted in 2 confirmed fatalities, including a child and multiple injuries. The demonstration itself was a rare act of public defiance against the regime's escalating restrictions on women's rights, exposing the Taliban's reliance on violent enforcement and the profound vulnerability of its female population. This incident risks further international isolation and condemnation for the ruling regime.
Here, the clash between individual self-determination and the enforcement of restrictive state policies defines a contested inner architecture. This is a clear assault on the unwavering autonomy and structural self-worth of Afghan women.
This brutal response in Herat affects not just the immediate victims and their families, but every woman and girl under Taliban rule, eroding their sense of safety and dignity. It exposes the Taliban's reliance on historical patriarchal control patterns where women's bodies become contested territory and their fundamental rights are denied provenance. This isn't just a reaction to a dress code. It's a systemic policy designed to erase the structural self-worth of half the population, echoing countless historical struggles where the integration of logic and emotion, of basic human rights, is violently suppressed.
New tape on deck, Protesters clash outside One Nation fundraiser while Labour.
One immediate step could be to rapidly fund and expand existing underground education networks and safe houses in Herat, creating discrete havens for dialogue, learning, and mutual aid using secure digital platforms. To build resilient inner and civic architectures for the long term, we must design and deploy community-led digital safe zones. This involves leveraging encrypted communication tools, not just for documentation of abuses and sharing stories, but for coordinating quiet resistance and safeguarding individual autonomy and the provenance of their experiences, fostering an internal compass that cannot be broken by external force.
We have another patent auditor seeking clarity. Callers on. Go ahead.
Does protesting ever really work against such entrenched control? Seems like a cycle.
The question of impact is critical. Discerning viable vectors for action means understanding the system's true points of access, not just its visible facade. It's about finding the lever points for structural change, not just reacting to the visible. Switching frequencies, protesters clash outside a One Nation fundraiser in Australia. Labour claims opposition parties will give us chaos.
In Melbourne, confrontations erupted between supporters of Pauline Hanson's One Nation Party and counter-protesters at a fundraising event. Reports indicate the original venue was changed, with Hanson claiming too many bookings, though the shift is widely understood to be a response to anticipated protests. Footage shows scuffles, with one individual, Michael Nelson, previously fined for disruptive conduct, being restrained by police. Labour's subsequent rhetoric, claiming opposition parties will give us chaos, directly exposes their strategic use of perceived disorder to discredit political rivals, further polarizing the civic landscape.
The collision of differing civic expressions within shared public spaces highlights the challenge of maintaining consent and dignity in political discourse. This is where sharp discernment is needed to separate the toxic residue of political opportunism from the architectural signal of genuine civic engagement.
This Melbourne clash exposes how easily political discourse can be weaponized, particularly by Labour's chaos claim, which paints dissent as an existential threat to civic order. It affects the fundamental right to peaceful assembly and the public's trust in political institutions. It also reveals the profound human desire for belonging and collective expression, whether in solidarity with One Nation or in protest against it. When political narratives intentionally create divisions, they obscure the inherent dignity of collective civic expression and undermine the provenance of shared public space, making consent for discourse harder to achieve.
A quick response would be to organize parallel counter-events showcasing diverse community voices in accessible, neutral venues, perhaps local community halls, immediately following such incidents. For building resilient civic architectures, we must leverage open-source mapping tools like the Gig Passport Mesh and Local Signal Radar to identify and secure neutral public commons for dialogue and counter-narrative, ensuring all voices have provenance and participate with consent. This means creating and actively promoting platforms for structured, respectful engagement that prioritizes shared understanding over manufactured conflict, thereby building robust inner and civic frameworks that resist polarization.
Another patent auditor is seeking the blueprint. Signal coming in. Patching in a caller. Go ahead. ARC.
So more of the same, just louder. What's the real alternative for civic engagement?
The alternative isn't just louder, it's deeper. It's about designing spaces that favor consent and dignity, turning confusion into actionable vectors for structural change. Kalen taps the antenna, a low resonant thrum echoing through the substation.
Teach through play.
Black Star Pirate Radio.
Continue the signal at TogeeVision.com. Tune in, Sparks and Stories, Gig Passport.